Welcome everyone to tonight's class entitled Struggling, Lift Up Another. Should we focus on lifting ourselves out of the quicksand, or can we accomplish that by lifting up another? So this is a fascinating discussion, and we will explore it from the lens of a very unique set of Jewish laws, particularly specific laws that have to do with the court of justice and how the litigation process begins and how it works. And from that, we'll delve a little bit deeper into the nuances of a particular circumstance and the profound lessons and meaning that we can take for ourselves in our personal lives. So let's jump right into it. Partial admission. So this is in our Parshas Mishpatim, which the name Mishpatim means laws, commandments, which this parsha is full of the number of laws and mitzvahs that are discussed in this week's parsha is one of the most from any other parsha. But it also, in addition to that, it goes back a little bit to prior to the giving of the Torah, right around Mount Sinai, before and after the Ten Commandments were spoken by Hashem on Mount Sinai. Before Moshe goes up on the mountain again, of course, is after the Ten Commandments were already spoken. Now he goes up on the mountain. It was supposed to be for 40 days and 40 nights. And what are the Jewish people going to do without their leader present with them for that period of time? So he appoints the elders and tells them there's the elders and Aaron and Hur, his brother and his nephew, that will judge together with them, and they should come to the elders and Aaron and Hur together with them during that time period, and they will answer all the questions that they might have during that time period. So from these couple of verses that the Torah describes what Moshe told them, we learn a specific set of laws that we will then go into a little deeper. So let's first read these verses here. God spoke to Moses. He told him, "Come up to me on the mountain and remain there, and I will give you the stone tablets, the law and the commandments which I have written to instruct you." So he tells him after the Ten Commandments were spoken, he tells him that he should come up on the mountain, and he was going to give him the luchot. That only happened later, after the formal event of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. And he tells him, "I will give you the Torah and the mitzvah." What does it mean, the law and the commandment? He's going to give him the written Torah together with the mitzvah, the commandments. That is the oral tradition, which he will instruct him as he's writing down all of the laws. He will also instruct him the oral tradition of what each of these laws particularly mean. Moses and Joshua, his servant, arose, and Moses ascended to the mount of God. To the elders he said, "Wait for us here until we return. To you, and here Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a case, let him go to them." So Moses and Joshua go together to the mountain. Moshe goes up on the mountain, and his servant, his trusted student, Yehoshua, remains there at the foot of the mountain, waiting for his teacher to come back down until he comes down 40 days later. He was completely dedicated, never left his teacher, and would go together with him wherever he went, and he went up the mountain, so he went with him and waited for them to come back down. To the rest of them, he tells them, "Wait here till we return." And Aaron and Hur are with you, are with the elders, and he concludes with telling them that whoever has a case, let him go to them. If they have a case, someone has an issue, a complaint, they should go to the elders, and they will adjudicate their troubles. Rashi comments, what does it mean to the elders? He said, as he left the camp, so this was as he was leaving the camp, going towards the mountain, he tells the elders that you should wait here, wait for us here. And Rashi comments, wait with the rest of the nation to be present to judge an argument between people. So you should all wait together with the rest of the people. You shouldn't separate. If all the leaders are going to leave and camp out by the mountain and everyone else will be separate, that won't work in getting people's issues resolved. He tells them, Aaron is coming with me, Yehoshua, Joshua is coming with me to the mountain. We'll wait at the foot of the mountain. Everyone else should wait here inside the camp. Now, the Talmud infers from this who should speak first when it comes to adjudicating a case when you're front of the court. Rav Nachman said, in the name of Rabba bar Avuha, from where do we know that the court hears the plaintiff's side first? From the verse that states, whoever has a case, let him go to them. The plaintiff should speak first. Whoever has the case, whoever's bringing the case should speak first. Of course, this doesn't mean that the plaintiff speaks without the defendant being there. They're both present in the courtroom at the same time while the court case, the Beit Din, is hearing the two sides. However, as we'll learn, there's a very big difference in a specific circumstances who speaks first, whether it's the plaintiff or the defendant. And in order to understand this a little bit better, I'll give you a brief overview of what we're going to be learning before we go through the sources in the text. And that is that there is a specific rule called amoda b'miktsas, someone that admits partially. They admit part of what the complaint is against them. So if the plaintiff comes and says that Reuven owes Shimon $100, and he doesn't want to give it to him, he denies it, whatever the case is, he files a lawsuit against him, brings him to the Beit Din, he comes to the Beit Din, and the court has them both present, and Reuven, the plaintiff, claims that Shimon, the defendant, owes him this $100. Then, typically, in order for the defendant to be required to pay that $100, he needs to have witnesses or bring clear proof that this money is owed to him. If he has witnesses that saw him give him the money and he doesn't have any proof of returning it, that would constitute the grounds for the Beit Din to resolve the case and require the defendant, Shimon, to have to pay the $100 back. Now, what happens in a case when Shimon, the defendant, responds by saying, it's true, I owe him money, but I don't owe him $100, I only owe him $50. I only owe him part of the money. So now this is the case which in halacha terminology is called a moda b'miktsas, that he's admitting part of the case, he's admitting that he owes a part of it, and in that specific circumstance, the Beit Din would require the defendant to take an oath, to make a shavua, an oath, swear. And this scenario of swearing is not just a statement, but he's holding a Torah scroll in his hands. He's swearing in the name of Hashem. And of course, one of the Ten Commandments, the third of the Ten Commandments, is not to mention God's name in vain, certainly not to swear in Hashem's name in vain. And it's pretty serious violation to swear in Hashem's name in vain. It's such a intimidating situation for one to put themselves into, that those that went beyond the letter of the law never wanted to take an oath or have to swear altogether. Even if they were absolutely 100% certain that they were correct, they rather pay a little extra money than go under this these terms of being required to take an oath by holding a Torah, mentioning Hashem's name. They rather not have to say Hashem's name for no reason and just pay a little extra money wouldn't hurt them any. And that was a way of people that wanted to go far beyond the letter of the law. However, if somebody the halacha requires that this person would have to make an oath. By making an oath, it would absolve him. He would not need to be required to pay the $50 that he's denying. In this particular circumstance, a plaintiff, Reuven, which is demanding $100, he doesn't have any other proof. He doesn't have witnesses. He doesn't have any other solid evidence that Shimon owes him the $100, and therefore it's one person's word against the other. And the only evidence that the court has is the person admitting his fault, admitting that he owes him money. But he's only admitting part of the money, and therefore the amount that he's admitting that he owes, he's required to pay. The other half that he's not admitting for, that he has to swear, make an oath that he only owes him the $50 and not the other $50. If the guy was one of the reasons for requiring this oath is the defendant obviously was not such a righteous guy that he was, admitting that he owes him part of the money. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the plaintiff schlep him to court. He could have when he went to him and asked him to pay him back the money that was lent, he could have paid him back right away, whether it's $50, $50,000, whatever it was that he owed him. If he was such a good guy, he could have immediately paid back, admitted that he owed him the money, and if he couldn't afford it, make some plan with him, figure it out. But the fact that he's denying it and only made this admission once he was in court, that casts some doubt onto his legitimacy, and because of that, the Torah places on him an oath, the requirement to making a shavua, making this oath in order for him, hopefully, that if he's actually not telling the truth, the fear of taking such an oath in vain would be enough to convince him to tell the full truth and admit that he owes the rest of it. There's a caveat to this particular scenario, and that is the one that speaks first. So if the plaintiff brings the complaint first and says that he owes him $100, then the defendant says that, yes, I owe him, but only $50, that's when he's required to make an oath, to take an oath upon himself. However, what happens if the defendant speaks first? They came to court, and before the plaintiff had a chance to speak, the defendant says, I owe him $50. At that point, because the defendant already admitted that he owes him $50, now what happens is the plaintiff's complaint there's only $50 left that he's complaining about. And now the amount that he's complaining about, the other $50, he's completely denying altogether. So that changes the scenario. So now if two people come into the court, if the plaintiff states his case first and says that he owes him $100 and the guy admits that he owes him $50, in that case then he'll be required to take an oath, and he'll have to swear to the other $50 that he doesn't owe him, or that he only owes him $50. However, if the defendant speaks first and admits to the $50, that would in the legal parameters absolve him from making an oath. He would not be required to take that oath anymore, because he doesn't fall under the category of admitting part way. Now the demand that he's being demanded, once he admitted 50 already, he's only being he's completely denying the rest of the money that is brought against him in that case. And therefore, it's important to know who's able to speak first. If the plaintiff speaks first, then the defendant will be required to take an oath if he's only admitting half of it. If the defendant speaks first, he'll be will not be required to take an oath. So if anyone has any comments or questions before we continue, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will go on and take a look at these texts and these details, and we'll come back shortly to review them as well in a more personal way of what we can learn from them and why it's so important today as well. So here is the source from the Code of Jewish Law, Laws of Chosh and Mishpat. This is the order of a court-ordered oath. The subject rises, holding a Torah scroll in his arms, and he swears in the name of God, saying, I hereby swear in the name of God of Israel that I do not owe this person anything. The court cautions the subject before taking the oath, and he warns him, know that the entire world trembled when God said, you must not swear by the name of your God in vain. When by the giving of the Torah, the entire world trembled when Hashem spoke these words that you should not swear in the name of Hashem in vain. Regarding other prohibitions, God says, I will absolve you. But about this prohibition, God declares, I will not absolve. So there's specific extra stringencies when it comes to the laws of taking an oath that are according to halacha, according to the Shulchan Aruch. This particular mitzvah of not saying Hashem's name in vain is particularly stringent, that about it Hashem says that I won't absolve you, meaning that it's much more difficult to obtain forgiveness for this particular mitzvah, for this particular sin. When opening a court case, this is from the Shach, one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. When opening a court case, the plaintiff wishes to present their side first, and the defendant wishes to present their side first. What is the practical ramification to who presents first? It's if the defendant admits partially, they can only be required to take a biblical oath if their admission followed the plaintiff's claim. If, however, the defendant admitted to owing 50 and only afterward the plaintiff claimed 100, the defendant is exempt from an oath. So as we mentioned, in order for the defendant to be required to make an oath, it's only after the plaintiff makes his claim. If he claims he owes him 100, then the defendant says that I only owe him 50, at that point he'll be required to take a shavua, to make an oath, which is a very serious thing to do. However, if the defendant spoke first and admitted that he owes 50, and only after his admission, and then the plaintiff says it wasn't 50 that he owed me, it was really 100 that he owed me, then the defendant is no longer required to make an oath. As we discussed, the reason for that is because by requiring to take on an oath, we're presenting the idea that he should have, if he's such a righteous guy, he should have admitted before he came to court that he owes him this money, not schlepped the other guy here. The fact that he's here and he's only admitting partially, he's not so trustworthy anymore, and therefore we require him to make an oath. Hopefully that will get him to admit if in fact he owes more money. However, if he admits on his own, then he's not required to take that oath anymore. The court listens to the plaintiff first, because if the defendant admits to part of the claim, as long as they have not fully repaid the debt, they may remain the defendant, since they could have voluntarily paid what they admitted to before being summoned to court. They are required to take an oath to verify this claim, because he could have admitted it before, he didn't, now he's in court, and therefore is required to take this oath. Now we have a scenario, another detail which is important for the lessons that we're going to learn from this, is the exception to this rule. Occasionally, the court may hear the defendant's claim first. When is that true? If the defendant's assets dropped in value, then the court allows them to present their case first. In other words, our whole premise for requiring the defendant to take an oath is that he's not such a righteous guy. He's not such a trustworthy guy. He told him he made the guy schlep him to court in order to extract from him the $50 that he owed him. We tell him he has to make an oath, and therefore we want to make sure that the case runs in such a manner that the defendant will be required to take an oath, and if he speaks first, he won't be required to take that oath. However, the one exception is when the judges on the panel recognize that there may be a valid reason why the defendant was trying to push off not paying what he owed. He may have really admitted that he owed the plaintiff money, but the reason why he didn't pay him until now, and he made this whole runaround that he had to be dragged to court because of it, and this lawsuit filed, is because he doesn't have money available, doesn't have actual funds available. He only has assets, and the assets which he has dropped in value significantly. Or if he would have to rush to sell them, he wouldn't get the full value of them. And therefore, had he admitted prior to owing money, he would have, although the plaintiff would have got the money that they were owed right away, the defendant would have lost a tremendous amount of value of their assets if they were forced to sell it right away. And because their assets dropped in value, therefore, that was the reason why they were trying to postpone having to pay. He admits that he owes them money, but if I'm going to be able to push it off a little till the value of my assets go up again, then I'll be able to regain a lot more money than if I would have had to sell my assets now and pay at a tremendous loss. So of course that's not a right thing to do. However, in that case, the court is allowed to give them the benefit of the doubt that really they wanted to admit it, and therefore they allow the defendant to speak first, which that would make that the defendant does not need to take an oath. So just to recap again, if plaintiff comes to the court, if he speaks first and says that he's owed $100, the defendant admits partially he's owed $50 or $20 or $70, whatever it is, he only says he owes, he admits to part of it, then the defendant needs to take an oath, which is a pretty serious matter, that he doesn't owe him anymore. If the defendant speaks first and openly admits to that amount before the complaint was officially filed, before the plaintiff speaks, then he does not have to make an oath, which is why the court generally only allows the defendant to speak after the plaintiff. However, if there's reason to assume perhaps why the defendant was pushing it off and not wanting to admit it until now because his assets dropped in value, then the court will allow the defendant to speak first. And here is the reasoning for this. The Shach, again on Shulchan Aruch, tells us that the defendant's assets depreciated in value, either intrinsically, that they depreciated, or due to his rush to sell, which would require him to sell at a loss if he were to repay the loan, and this fact delayed him from repaying, then the defendant is allowed to speak first. So this is the overview of the halachas regarding this particular case, which we will delve a little bit deeper into in a moment. Any comments or questions? Is everything clear so far? Okay, so now let's look at what this means in our personal lives. We all have plaintiffs and defendants in our own lives. And what does it mean? Who's the plaintiff? Who's the defendant? Who's admitting partially? What is with the oath? And what is with our requirement not to make an oath? And sometimes when our assets diminish in value, the Rebbe gives us a fascinating insight, profound lessons that we can take from this. First, we have to explore who is the plaintiffs and who is the defendant. We have explained many times that all matters of the revealed dimension of the Torah also have a spiritual dimension. There are some matters in the revealed dimension that can only be understood by explaining their spiritual dimension. This is true in our case as well. So everything within halacha, anything within revealed aspect of the revealed aspect of Torah, we can look into the deeper meaning of it in the spiritual dimension and take lessons from it. Every Jew has a quote-unquote plaintiff. This is the negative inclination. The negative inclination first entraps us into a transgression, or at least in an imperfect act. It then sues us, arguing that since it entrapped us, we should be fully handed over to its control. So who is the plaintiff? Is the Yetzer Hara. Hashem created each and every one of us with a negative inclination, and his job is to try and entrap us, to try and pull us into doing things which are against what Hashem wants us to do. After he traps us and he seduces us to do something that we shouldn't be doing, then he comes to Hashem and says, "Oh, look, this person should this person listen to exactly what I tried to get them to do. They just did the sin. They just transgressed in this particular area, and now I should have full control over this person. This person belongs to me. It's my domain. He gave in once. That's it. Now I should be allowed. Now he should be made to transgress more things. The person's ability to not transgress and the ability to have the power to overcome their evil should be diminished, because every time the person does a negative thing, every time we listen to the Yetzer Hara, it should give strength to the Yetzer Hara, give him much stronger ability to draw us into doing more negative things. So this is the plaintiff, is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, complaining he did something wrong, now he's fully mine. We, as the defendants in this case, only partially admit the plaintiff's claim. It is true that we committed a transgression, but we didn't become fully submerged in it. With all of our being, the core of our soul transcends any transgression, and even at the time of our transgression, remains bound together with Hashem, with God. Moreover, even if in our revealed faculties, we all possess inner goodness. The sages state that even the willful transgressors of Israel are filled with mitzvot like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. Filled over here is meant literally our entire being is filled with mitzvot. So what is our defense to the plaintiff? It's true that we may have transgressed, we may have slipped up and not done something completely right at a particular moment in time. However, even at that moment in time, we didn't completely submit ourselves to the Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination, and say, we're ready to do whatever you want. It was only partially. We only partially messed up because our core of every Jewish person, the core of our soul, the core of our neshama, no matter how far a person strays away from the right path, as the Torah teaches us, Afal Pishachata Yisrael, who even if someone sinned tremendously, even if a person transgressed just about everything possible that they could do wrong, nevertheless, there's always that neshama, the deepest level of the neshama is always still connected to Hashem and can always be reignited to come forth and to overpower the Yetzer Hara again and become fully committed to living their lives in accordance with the way that Hashem wants us to. And therefore, when the Yetzer Hara, when the evil inclination comes and says that you messed up and you did an Aveira, I got them to transgress a certain sin, I got them to not fulfill a certain positive command that they should have fulfilled. The response is, it's true, I messed up partially, but even in that moment, it was just outwardly that I was transgressing that particular sin because I was overcome with tremendous push of negativity at that point in time. As the Torah calls it, the ruach shtus, the spirit of folly that comes and pushes a person into doing something that they shouldn't have done. But it wasn't me. That's not who my true self was. Really, I'm still connected to Hashem. Really, who am I really? My core being is that I'm a Jew. I'm connected to Hashem at the deepest of levels, and I want to reconnect. So therefore, the plaintiff's complaint is only partially correct. It's true that I sinned, but only partially. The rest of me is still whole. So much so that our sages teach us that even someone that is a willful transgressor, they're trying to do everything wrong. Even such a person, we have so many mitzvahs, which is part of the beauty of having so many mitzvahs in the Torah, 613 of them, that it's almost impossible to find somebody that didn't do some mitzvahs too. There's a story, a beautiful story told of one of the followers of Chabad Rebbe. I think it was the Tzemach Tzedek. I think it was the third Chabad Rebbe that he came. He was a very observant follower, and he went off into the business world. And in order to be successful in his business, he decided that he needs to look like the rest of the business people. So when he would go do his business dealings, he would take off his Hasidic garb, and he would dress up like the peasants, like the rest of the business people that he was doing business with. Then, every few would go off on a few months in business. Then he would come back to Lubavitch, come back to visit the Rebbe again. He would put on his Hasidic garbs, and he would go back and mingle with everyone else as if he was like all the other people, all the other Hasidim around him. This went on for a number of years until he comes back one day and he says, "Who am I fooling? This is the way I dress when I'm not by my Rebbe. This is not the way I dress when I'm not here. This is the way I dress all year round. I'm dressing like the rest of the people around me. So let me show my true self to the other people that I'm encountering." And when he goes in to have his turn, his private audience with his mentor, with his teacher, with the Rebbe, he dresses up just like he always did. And at that point, the Rebbe turns to him and tells him, "Until now, I thought you were fooling everybody else. The whole year when you're on business, I thought you're fooling everybody else. But now I see that it's me that you were fooling." And the guy broke down in tears, and that grasped his attention, and he completely turned around the way that he was behaving and started to dress more appropriately, and turned completely around to the way that he lived prior to. I'm not sure if he continued his business dealings, but whatever he did, he that helped him straighten himself out. The point being that the Rebbe recognized that even if he may have been dressed a certain way, the rest of the year, perhaps that's really just what the show was. The show is, in order to get those business deals done, he was dressing a certain way, but that's not really who he was. The problem became when he started to feel that that's who he really was. And of course, all of us, we all have days and times when we don't feel the best. We don't feel that we've done our best. We feel like we perhaps messed up a little bit, slipped up a little bit. We always need to recognize that the slip up, the times that we didn't do what we should have done, that's not really who we are. Really who we are is actual piece of Hashem that came into us, that our soul is one, united with Hashem, and constantly, no matter what we did, however far we may have gone, however far astray we may have gone, from big to small, we always are connected with Hashem, and that's really who we are. And this is our defense, coming to say, we're even someone that willfully transgressed is full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate is full of seeds, and therefore the complaint of the plaintiff of the Yetzer Hara is not completely accurate. The Torah tells us regarding this admission, this partial admission, this modeh b'miktsas, for every offense, for a bull, for a donkey, for a lamb, for a garment, for any lost article concerning which he will claim, this is it. So he's claiming this is it. This is the thing that he lost, or that he stole, that doesn't belong to him. The pleas of both parties shall come to the judges, and then they need to. The judges has to sort out who the bull belongs to, the donkey, the lamb, or whatever else they're arguing over who it belongs to. But from this particular terminology that the Torah uses, it says al kol dvar pesha in Hebrew, for every offense. So for every offense, according to the spiritual reading of the verse, the claim is for every offense. What does it mean, every offense? Intentional offenses that hinder one's divine mission in this world, as well as any loss. What is a loss? A loss is when one fails to execute their mission in the best possible manner, thereby wasting or quote-unquote losing some of the powers of the divine soul. So we have two different areas in which we may make mistakes. One are things that we intentionally or do wrong, things that we know not to be the right thing to do, and we do it anyway. There's another whole area of things which we may have not fulfilled in the proper way, and that's not by actually doing something, but by not utilizing the capabilities that Hashem granted us with, that we were endowed with special powers and abilities and talents that we have, and not utilizing them to fulfill the mission for which we're put here. To these claims, an offense, an intentional offense, as well as a loss, what is our answer? Our answer is this is it, meaning there can only be a claim against this particular part, against a portion. We only partially admit the claim. We admit this part of the claim, but not the other part of it. So no matter what it is, whether we're not utilizing our abilities to the utmost, or we're violating something that we shouldn't have done, our answer remains the same, that this is it. There's only this particular portion of it is true, but the other portion of it is not true, because we are completely, at every moment, always connected to Hashem in our fullest, no matter how far off we may have gone at that moment. So now that we have the plaintiff is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that claims that we did something wrong, he should get our attention completely. We have the defendant ourselves that are responding and saying we're only partially responsible, but not for the whole thing, because most of us is still connected to Hashem at that moment. So what is the solution? There's a couple of solutions that can happen in our spiritual response to the complaint of the Yetzer Hara. One option is that the evil inclination speaks first, the plaintiff speaks first, the defendant speaks second, and now we're required to take on an oath. The Torah rules that a partial admitter is required to take an oath. After they take the oath, we believe them regarding the part of the claim that they deny. To explain this on the spiritual plane. So how do we explain taking an oath that we believe them on the part that they deny after taking this oath? Since this person has already been partially entrapped by the negative inclination, they need an infusion of greater strength in order not to fall further under the negative inclination's control. Sometimes a person can confess just in order to avoid the entire hassle. We therefore administer the person an oath. So what is the purpose of an oath? The purpose of an oath, as we'll soon see, the Hebrew word for an oath is shavua. Shavua comes from the same as another Hebrew word, which if we switch the dot on the shin to a sin, will be sava. Savea, which means to be satiated, which means to be full. The idea of an oath is not just that they should swear, but they should be invigorated with extra spiritual energy to be able to overcome the challenges that come upon them. The Hebrew word for oath is shavua, which has the same root as sova, sustenance. We administer to this person sustenance, even greater powers in order to maintain the holy state of their remaining self. A person that has done a sin, a person that has violated, transgressed, or not utilized their ability to the utmost, they need extra empowerment in order to not fall to the seduction of the Yetzer Hara again, not to fall into the powers of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination again. So how do we manage that? By empowering that person with extra spiritual energy, which is the idea of the oath, the shavua. However, that also comes with its risks. An oath is a very grave matter. In our case, what does it mean, an oath? By taking this oath, the person is taking a great risk. If they don't utilize these additional powers properly, they won't only lack the achievements they needed to reach with these powers, they will deserve a punishment for wasting such special powers. This is why the sages cautioned us to avoid oaths as much as possible, even oaths about matters that are clearly true. So what happens when we make an oath? Hashem invigorates us with extra special energy, which is a special gift. But now we have together with that gift comes a real challenge. With that opportunity becomes a real challenge. If I'm going to use that extra invigoration of power and energy that Hashem endows upon me at that point in time, perhaps I'll be able to get out of not falling to the Yetzer Hara again in the future, and at least not so soon. However, if I don't utilize that extra ability, that extra energy that I was given, then not only am I violating a regular mitzvah, not utilizing my abilities to the utmost in the regular sense, now I'm suddenly responsible for not achieving what I should have when I'm given this extra power. So this extra energy, this extra dose of spiritual empowerment, which I was gifted by taking that oath, so to speak, is now being abused. It's kind of like a person that caused us some tremendous heartache in the past. They, had some issues, and they did something really not good to us or to a loved one or another person. They try to get out of it, and one of the first things you need to do is to ask for forgiveness and welcome that person again, try to make up with them, and of course that comes along with the commitment of never doing such things ever again. What happens when we forgive somebody and then they come back, a few days later and the same thing happens again? Not only is it going to be difficult to make up, but that difficulty and that challenge that was created is now double or triple as much as it was. And if you make up again and then again a third time or fourth time, a person goes on back on a not good path and continues to repeat a repeat offender of the same thing, it becomes extremely challenging and difficult. So here too as well, when Hashem gives us extra dose of energy, if we don't utilize that to the utmost, then we're not only not achieving what we should have, but it's an extra, together with it, it's an extra slap in the face, so to speak, to the Hashem that's giving us that extra empowerment by not utilizing that ability. So of course, taking this oath or being administered this extra spiritual power is a wonderful thing if utilized properly, but it comes together with its own risks. The Talmud concludes and presents a way through which the defendant can avoid an oath in a case where the defendant states his side first. This exemption can be attained when the defendant asserts that the value of their assets are depreciating as a result of the claims against them. So now comes this last nuance within this halacha. When are we, as the defendants of the plaintiff of the Yetzer Hara's claim, not required to make that oath? We're not required to take that oath and take that extra spiritual energy being given to us and take the risk of not utilizing it in the most appropriate manner. The solution is, if the defendant speaks first, if we're able to speak first, how would we be able to present our claim, so to speak, to Hashem first? If we can show that our assets are depreciating. Then we can speak first, and we don't have to get that risk, and everything works out. So what does this mean that our assets are depreciating? As we'll soon see, that this is an area in which thinking more about others and less about ourselves is the key to success in this matter. So we'll explore the end of the life of one of the sages of the Mishnah. His name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and something that happened at the end of his life, which will give us insight into our discussion of how we can avoid, so to speak, this oath, this extra dose of energy that we need, and how we can get the results that we would like to, being able to claim that our assets are depreciating if we're going to enter into this discussion with the evil inclination. So let's first take a look at what happened at the end of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's life. The Talmud relates that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai cried before his passing and explained that he is crying because I have two paths before me, one to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and one to Gehenna. And I don't know on which path they are leading me. How can I not cry? So now we have to understand, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the leading sages at the end of the second Temple era times, and it was largely in credit to him that the Torah world and the continuation of the Sanhedrin lasted a little bit longer, a number of years longer, and the continuation continued because of much of his leadership and how he taught Torah to others, how he spread it to all those around him. And he was living at a very challenging time, and he was a person that every moment of his day was used in studying Torah and teaching other people and living his life connecting to Hashem in the highest of levels, higher than we can ever imagine. So this passage raises a well-known question. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the greatest Tannaic scholars. As the sages relate his praises in a number of places, he was certainly absolutely particular about his observance of both the positive and negative mitzvot. Definitely in his own life and fulfillment of the mitzvahs, he fulfilled them in his utmost as much as he could have on his own. So how can it be then that he wasn't sure which way he'd be going, to Gan Eden or to Gehenna? Which level of Gan Eden he may have attained. Maybe that should have been his question. But was he really questioning if he's going to Gan Eden or he's going to what people like to translate as hell? Gehenna isn't really that. It's more of a cleansing process in order to be able to get to Gan Eden afterwards. But when he was leaving this world, how could he have such a question? Not only that, we also need to understand why Rabbi Yochanan only expressed this concern before his death. It is clear that his concern was not about the reward or punishment he would be facing in Gan Eden or in Gehenna, but about his spiritual status. Was he worthy of the holiness of Gan Eden or not? This is something worthy of constant concern, not just when approaching death, but for the entire duration of one's life. How could it be that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was only concerned about this on his deathbed? I mean, isn't this something that we all think about on a daily basis? If we're doing the right thing, am I doing what Hashem wants? If I can, where I can fix things up. In fact, each night when we say the Shema at nighttime before we go to bed, it's an appropriate time to think about how tomorrow can be better than today. And it's a constant struggle. If not every single day, at least a week, monthly, and if not that, at least once a year on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we think about where we're up to and how we can become better. How can it be that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, someone of his stature, was only concerned about this at the end of his life? So here's a fascinating insight into how consumed Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was with a task at hand that he was busy with. One way to explain this is that we all have a mission and purpose to fulfill during our lives in this world. We are granted the necessary lifespan and abilities to achieve this mission properly, no more, no less. When we fail to utilize a day, an hour, or even a moment properly, we are not just lacking the personal spiritual growth that we could and should have had. Every moment we neglect our mission, even when we are engaged in positive matters. If they are not our mission, it is a wasted moment from our mission. Moreover, we are betraying Hashem's mission. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was completely engrossed in his mission at every moment, studying Torah and observing mitzvot, he was so engrossed in fulfilling his mission that he had no time to stop and think about himself. What is his personal status? How could he interrupt his work in order to think about himself and his spiritual status when he's obligated to use this time to fulfill his mission? What was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai his life completely consumed with? Learning, teaching others, helping others. There's a fire burning outside. It's not time to think about how I'm going to save my little personal belongings. We've got to put out the fire, make sure the lives are being saved. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was so consumed, so involved in the community, such a tremendous leader that he had no time to think about himself. How could he take a moment to stop and observe, thinking about how he can be better? Which way is he going? I'm busy. There's a task at hand. I'm busy doing my job. And his job, he looked at to such an extreme that even a moment was too much for him to take his eye off the goal and think about something else. When did he have that time? On his deathbed. His time's over. There's no more time. He couldn't fulfill his mission anymore here. Okay, now he has to think about, did I do the right thing or not? Of course, this is a very high level of perfection that someone can get to, that they're completely engrossed in only doing what Hashem wants from them. They don't have a moment even to think about themselves. Only in the moments before his passing, as his mission on this earth came to conclusion, did he pause to make an accounting of himself, and this caused him to cry. So of course, the question wasn't which way he was going. It was the first time he even thought about this. Now that he's leaving the world, am I going this way? Am I going that way? Did I fulfill everything exactly the way I should have? Did I miss something? At that moment, he started to think to himself, did I do everything completely? And of course, that moment is what caused him to break down in tears. Did I fulfill everything the way that I should have or not? Taking a lesson from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, though, in our own lives, when the Yetzer Hara comes and complains that you may have slipped up, you may have done something wrong, and we come and admit that it's true we did something wrong, but only partially. I am mainly connected to Hashem. I still have a part of Hashem that's connected to me. And in a modeh b'miktsas, in a partial admission, doesn't matter if you admit to 99% or if you admit to 1%. A person may have been 1% connected to Hashem and 99% that the Yetzer Hara is right, or it may have been only 1% that the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, is correct, and we're correct on the other 99. But the whole gamut from 1 to 99 that we're admitting on that would require us to take that oath, one of the methods of not being required to take that oath is if our assets depreciate. And like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he felt during his lifetime he doesn't have time to engage in this conversation with which way I'm going. Am I coming better? Am I doing the best that I should have? Because if he would have been focusing on himself, that would make that his assets are depreciating. His mission here on earth, every day, every moment of his life, were completely given over to fulfilling this mission, that if he was going to engage in this conversation, it would take away from his mission. And Hashem promises that this approach to our divine mission, not thinking about ourselves and focusing completely on our mission, is a basic principle of divine service that is demanded from all of us, and Hashem will fill our days to make them complete. When we contemplate the fact that we have been granted a specific lifespan in order to fulfill our mission in this world, and every moment spent on other matters is, so to speak, a betrayal of Hashem's mission, we will tremble and forget about our personal concerns. We will invest ourselves completely in fulfilling our mission to the point that we won't perceive ourselves as people fulfilling Hashem's mission. All we feel is the mission itself. So this is a profound insight into our own lives. The less that we think about where we're at, and the more that we're focusing on the goal at hand, instead of thinking about, am I the best that I can be? Is there another mitzvah that I can fulfill? Looking at more opportunities to help another person, to give more tzedakah, to give more charity, to take on another mitzvah that we may have not been fulfilling until now. The more that we're focusing on the goal, on fulfilling another mitzvah, and helping other people fulfill more mitzvahs, and sharing the knowledge that we have with others, the less that we have time to engage in this conversation with the evil inclination. When we achieve self-negation and complete devotion to our divine mission, we will merit, as Hashem promises, I will fill the days of your life. This means that even if we had days that we didn't use to work on our mission, or even use them contrary to our mission, God pledges to fulfill all the days so that all our days will be complete. So even if we did mess up in the past, the more that we're focused, zeroing in on our purpose on earth and our mission and how we can do better, and focusing on which areas where we can do a little more, another mitzvah here, help another person there. The more that we're doing that, the more that Hashem tells us that I will fill all the areas and days and minutes and moments of your life that you may have been lacking. I will fill those in because you are doing as much as you can to fulfill what your mission is in your present state. Now we can come back, and this also explains the deeper explanation for the law that when the defendant claims their assets are depreciating in value, they are exempted from taking the oath of a partial admission. The years and abilities that Hashem gives us, that God gives us in order to fulfill our mission in this world, those are our assets. When we achieve complete self-nullification to the extent that our entire existence is solely our status as a divine emissary, and all of our time and abilities are devoted to fulfilling this mission to make a dwelling place for God in the lower realm, then naturally we have no time to engage in a legal dispute with a negative inclination. We don't have time for this nonsense talking to the negative inclination. You've got a claim, I didn't do it properly. My time and effort, I don't have space in my mind to talk to you. I don't have space for this for this discussion. Whether I partially sinned or a little bit more sinned, and how much I was connected to Hashem. I've got a task at hand going forward. We can either dwell on the past and see how much was I connected prior to this conversation, so to speak, with the evil inclination, or we can be focused on what's the goal at hand right now. And right now, I've got a mission to do. I've got to go to work and have honest dealings in all of my business dealings. I need to be truthful and trustworthy. I need to help other people. I need to do all the things that the Torah tells us that we should be doing. I don't have time to discuss this with the evil inclination. It's very frequent that a person will think to themselves, after perhaps not doing something 100% the way that they think they should have done it, that I'm not the best that I've been, and a person can bring a person to fall into a state of sadness that I'm not the best. I already did this wrong, I did that wrong, and the more that we think about it, the more we might see the things that we didn't do the best that we should have done. And then we have the opposite side, focusing in on, it's true, I may have not done the best, but look at all the good things that I did. Even a person that is completely an evil person has mitzvahs full like the seeds of a pomegranate. Certainly each one of us has many good things that we did, many more good things that we will continue to do, and the more that we focus on the positivity and the goodness, the things that we want to do and want to accomplish, and looking forward, marching forward, and helping other people, and sharing with other people, and advancing ourselves in our own connection to Hashem, the more of that we do, the less time and space there is for the evil inclination to mix into our thoughts and our minds and set us off track. And by doing so, not only are we exempt from this oath, from this extra inspiration necessary, we go right around it and tell Hashem our assets are depreciating, we've got time and energy that all has to be spent on moving forward, and Hashem agrees and responds in kind, saying, let's look at the second paragraph here, this argument is accepted and we are exempt from taking an oath as a result. Not only are we assured that we won't fall under the dominion of the negative inclination, God forbid, but on the contrary, Hashem promises, I will fill the number of your days, and even that which was previously lacking will be completely restored. And this is the solution of moving forward, is helping others, advancing ourselves, focusing on positivity, on goodness, on kindness, and doing more mitzvahs, and that will help us to overcome the challenges that we encounter in our own lives. So of course, we wish everyone success.